Okay. So you remember that we talked about this particular thing, and I'm going to revise it again so that you also get to know that what is there. So I talked about this particular SBDD and LBDD. So in both the case, what we have to first of all find a particular molecule, and both the thing what they does, they actually tries to find out a particular molecule that has some a lead-like property into it, or that is showing maximum activity. For example, if it's a drug to inactivate a protein, then if you select 5 molecules, you have to select the particular molecule which shows maximum inactivation. Okay. If it's an enzyme and you have to inhibit that enzyme, then that inhibitor must have maximum inactivation, and along with it, it also must show all the other properties and parameters that a particular drug-like molecule has, and these are known as ADMET profiling. And obviously I'm going to discuss about ADMET, but apart from it, that molecule should also be non-toxic in nature, because suppose if that particular molecule you see that it shows highest inactivation, but that actually behaves as a toxin in your body. Now if there's something like that happens, then of course you can't use that particular molecule, right? So, and once when you get that molecule, or suppose sometime it might happen that you are getting one molecule that is not showing any toxicity, but that particular molecule has very low inactivation. So now you must increase its inactivating properties. Okay, you must increase its inactivating properties. And how to do that? That actually depends upon the lead optimization, that you have to add and subtract some kind of groups and all. We're going to discuss those in detail just after a few minutes. Okay. So the first topic that we're going to discuss today is that the pharmacokinetics and the drug likeness. Now obviously, when you select a particular ligand or you design a particular small molecule, then there are 3 parameters that are associated with it. One is the pharmacokinetics, second is the pharmacodynamics, and third is the drug likeness. Now what is pharmacokinetics? As you can see, that pharmacokinetics is the branch of pharmacology concerned with the movement of drugs within the body. That means how long or how is the molecule behaving in your body. That is the movement of drugs. For example, if you are taking a drug, it must first of all gets absorbed through your GI tract. If it fails to get absorbed, can it act as a very excellent drug? Of course not. It can't act as an excellent drug, right? Because it must get absorbed through the body. So that's one of the parameters we must look for, absorption. And next comes distribution, that where your molecule is distributed. Is that molecule going to the plasma, or is it moving through the blood to various other organs? And even if it is moving to the organs, then which is the organ it is going to specifically? Because remember, if that particular molecule is, suppose someone has lungs cancer, or suppose someone is using a drug for COVID virus, it wants to kill the COVID virus. Now where do you think that drug must go to in your body? Where should the drug must be localized? To show optimum activity? In which organ? Lungs. Absolutely right, because the COVIDs are all present in the lungs, right? So the drug must move inside your lungs and must be present there. Now somehow it happens that the drug you have designed, it has the tendency to move into your liver. Now can that molecule act as a drug? Of course not, because the molecule is not going to the intended organ where it must move to. Where is its the target organism? Suppose it wants to kill the virus. The virus are present in lungs, so it must move into the lungs. So that is the distribution part. Okay, next comes the metabolism part, then comes the excretion part, then the toxicity. I'm going to discuss this. And apart from it, the pharmacokinetics. So this pharmacokinetics actually deals with this kind of things, the ADMET profiling. And finally, then next we have a drug likeness. What is drug likeness? Drug likeness actually says that, suppose for you are all I simply forgot, what are you doing currently? What are you currently doing? I mean, in which stream are you on? Anyone? Payal?
I'm from neuroscience stream.
Neuroscience MSc?
Yeah, MSc in neuroscience.
In which university?
From University of Madras.
University of Madras. So now listen, suppose you need to get into your college. So what is the criteria that you must have? First of all, you must have had biology in your standard 11th and 12th, right? And after that you must have passed 12th with a successful number, and after you pass the 12th you must have gotten into a BSc somewhere, and after you pass from the BSc you must have had some qualification. You must have had above 60% number of at least first class honors, and after that to get entry into that particular MSc college or in University of Madras with neuroscience, you must have had a marks above a particular threshold, right? And if there were some other external factors like there might have been a written test, there might have been a written test, and after written test there might have been a interview. So if these are present, then you actually have to qualify for each of those things to get into the desired college. Okay, for example, if suppose you want to be a doctor, then you must, what are the criteria that you must have? First of all, you must have passed the NEET examination. And suppose you want to be a doctor from a government college, then even if you pass the NEET examination, you must have a very good marks in with very high percentage, so that you might get into that particular college, right? Okay. And after that there are some other associated criteria, like you must have had a particular marks above a particular threshold, like 80%, 60%, something like that in your HS or in your standard 12. So these are the criteria that you must have. So similarly, to become a drug or to act as a drug or to be proclaimed as a drug, any molecule must possess certain characteristics, and these characteristics together are known as drug likeness parameters. Okay, so example, suppose there is a particular molecule. Now any molecule, if you survey all the molecules that are available in the market, there are certain criteria that are common in all those molecules. So those criterias, they actually are known as drug likeness criteria. Okay, understand? So that's the drug likeness. Now what are the criteria? We're going to discuss. So now let's go back to the pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamics. So I talked about the absorption, I talked about the bioavailability and distribution of the particular molecule. Now suppose, why is absorption important? Now suppose you have a molecule and you are taking it as an oral pill. Now can you tell one criteria that any drug must have? Any one criteria, a common criteria that all the molecule must have? What do you think? Any criteria off the top of your head?
Non-toxic?
Non-toxic, excellent. That's a very good criteria, non-toxic, and absolutely right. And apart from it, another criteria? For an oral pill, it must be water soluble. Why? Because if a particular molecule is not water soluble, what will happen? It can't flow through your blood, because our body is made up of 70% water. So to become a drug, any molecule must be highly water soluble, because if it is not water soluble, can it flow through our blood? No, it can't flow through our blood, right? It will fail to flow through our blood. So that's why that is the one criteria that a molecule must have. Now suppose for absorption, there are various other criteria for absorption also. Suppose you are ill, you are now you have high fever. So what is the molecular drug that you are going to take if you have fever? Paracetamol, absolutely. You have to take paracetamol, right? So now if you take paracetamol, okay, you are taking paracetamol, very good. But how long do you think the effect of paracetamol lies in your body?
3 to 4 hours.
3 to 4 hours, absolutely. And why is that? Because after a certain time, the paracetamol gets digested, or to be more precise, it gets metabolized. Now again, coming to the basic. Suppose according to your age and according to your body weight, generally the doctor prescribes a medicine, right? So suppose if I am obviously I'm very tall and I'm really fat. I'm not that fat, I'm 80 kg weight and I'm 5 feet 10. So according to my body weight and my body structure and my age, the doctor generally prescribes me Calpol 800, 850 or something like that. But obviously the same, they are not going to prescribe the same to you also, because if you have a very much lesser body weight, so much lesser age, then obviously you need a drug of much lower dose. But suppose in my case, suppose I need a drug of Calpol 800 dose, I need paracetamol 800 dose for my fever to reduce. But the drug that I am taking, that particular drug only gets 50% absorbed in your body. So if I take Calpol 800, what is the dose of molecule that is going to be present in my system? Very easy. That particular molecule can get only 50% absorbed through your body. So if you take a molecule, only 50% of the molecule gets absorbed. The rest of the molecule, it gets released from the body in the form of stool. So if your body requires 800 dose, what is the dose that you must take?
$400?
No, because it gets absorbed, 50% absorbed. So if I take 400, only 200 of that dose will get absorbed. Right? Are you getting my point? Suppose the drug only gets absorbed 50%. So that means if I take 800, if I take a drug of dose 800 mg and 50% of it got absorbed, so how much of the drug is present in my system? 400 is present in my system, right? So now to make sure that my body gets 800 mg of dose, I must take 1600 mg. Is this part clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is the absorption or the absorption coefficient, how much that molecule is getting absorbed. Okay, so if the molecule itself gets absorbed only 50%, then you have to take double the dose. So I have to take 1600 mg to keep a 800 mg of concentration inside my body, in my system. So this is the absorption. Okay, now if there are any molecules that gets absorbed, 100% absorption occurs. Now obviously if you need 800 of mg in your system, you are going to take 800 mg. So that's why the power is given, how much mg of the drug is present. Now obviously for any molecule, if it gets absorbed 100%, then obviously it's much better. And how will it get absorbed 100%? If it is water soluble, because if there is some molecule that is not water soluble, then it is not going to get absorbed through your body. Understand? So next comes the distribution part, that where the molecule is getting allocated to. So if it's a drug that must reach lungs, the drug will flow through the blood, it will reach every organ, but it is not going to get localized in other organs. Only it is going to get localized only into the lungs. And will it flow through the blood or will it be present in plasma? That's another question. So that is the question of distribution and bioavailability. And after that you have the metabolism. As I've said, that if you take a paracetamol, then generally the fever doesn't come back for 3 to 4 hours. And after 3 to 4 hours you see that yes, the effect of the paracetamol starts to wear off and you starts to feel again a little bit of you feel that yes, it's chilly, because that particular molecule is getting chopped off, it is getting degraded, it is getting metabolized. So this particular thing falls under the pharmacokinetics, how fast the molecule is getting metabolized. And if it is getting metabolized, is it going to give rise to some toxic metabolite or not? Because when a particular drug gets metabolized, it gives rise to ROS and NOS. There are certain compounds that gives rise to ROS and NOS. You know ROS and NOS? Reactive oxygen species and reactive nitrogen species. And why is this name reactive? Because they are highly reactive and so reactive that they cause mutation at genetic level. They are so reactive that they can cause mutation at the protein, they can cause mutation even at genetic level. And if that occurs, then that particular mutation is non-reversible, then it is going to get embedded into your gene, and that might lead to some kind of diseases. Okay, and again, depending upon metabolism, it depends, because what do we want? We want our molecule to get excreted out of our system, right? Because when I'm taking a drug, I want the drug to get out of the system, and that's also a property. How is it getting excreted out? Is it getting excreted through urine, or is it getting excreted through stool, or is it getting excreted through the sweat and other factors, or is it getting excreted at all, or is it getting deposited into the kidney or liver? Because there are some molecules, most of the drugs, they don't clear out of your body at 100% efficiency. As there is a certain percentage of drug that gets deposited into your kidney or liver. And I don't know if I've told you this or not, but I had a friend actually. Did I tell you about my friend in the last class?
Yes, sir.
The person with a single kidney?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so remember, this is really a very tough thing. Okay, so this is particular thing that we can actually calculate, we can analyze for a particular molecule, and this is the pharmacokinetics of a molecule that we can analyze. And next comes the pharmacodynamics. What is pharmacodynamics? Pharmacodynamics is actually discusses what the drug does, how the drug behaves, the mechanism of its work in your body. Where is it going to? With which other receptor is it binding? How it is showing its activity? And what happens to the other signaling pathway after it gets activated? So all these things fall under the pharmacodynamics. And for that, we need to monitor in a cell line or in a mouse model or a patient tissue. You need to collect the data, you need to sample the patient tissue and analyze these in the labs. So that's one thing that we can't do beforehand. We can only do after the drug gets absorbed into your system. Okay, so these are the two things that we're going to discuss. And now the pharmacodynamics we can't analyze, but the pharmacokinetics is one that we can actually analyze beforehand. And this is actually the basic pharmacokinetic parameters. Okay, and the basic mathematical equations by which we can find them out. For example, see, under the absorption we have bioavailability, and bioavailability means the amount of drug absorbed divided by drug dose. So that's what I was talking about. So suppose the drug dose is 800 mg, and suppose only 400 mg of it got absorbed. So what is the bioavailability? Is 0.5. So obviously we want a drug to have bioavailability score of 1, or anything that is higher or nearer to 1 is much better. The more the number, the better it is. Okay, similarly there is also fragment of distribution. Then we have the same thing for elimination, and elimination is actually a common term for both metabolism and excretion. Okay, and this is how we actually calculate these things. Okay, but obviously later on also we have to first hand we have to select how do you actually conclude the data. We have to simply upload that particular drug, feed that particular drug to a mouse, and then you have to take its blood sample. And after you take the blood sample, you have to now see how much of the molecule is present in the blood, and you have to also have to collect the excretion of the mouse. You have to collect the urine sample, you have to collect the stool sample, and analyze this for the same compound, if any of the compound is present in the urine or stool. And if you found that yes, there is a certain kind of drug and it is present in the stool in an unbroken manner, then you know that that particular drug has not been absorbed. Because any drug that if it gets absorbed into the body, it is bound to get metabolized, right? And if it gets metabolized, then obviously it's not going to be a whole molecule. It is going to be a chopped off fragment of molecule, right? Because it is getting, metabolism means getting chopped off, getting fragmented. So getting 100% of the authentic or non-broken molecule in the stool sample or in the urine sample means that particular drug has not been absorbed through the system or through the GI tract. Okay, so now we'll talk about this drug like this. Now the first one, the Lipinski was actually the first person who actually analyzed and started to find out all the common criteria that a molecule must have, or any drug which are actually marketed those molecule have. And after careful consideration, he found out that these are the 4 criteria that any molecule that are actually present in the market that must have, or any molecule that actually acts as a very good drug, they usually have. So what are the fragments? First is the number of hydrogen bond donor. So number of hydrogen bond donor is usually less than equal to 5. And then he found out that the number of hydrogen bond acceptor must be less than equal to 10. So that means number of hydrogen bond donor means NH or OH, right? So number of NH and OH in a particular molecule or in a particular molecule must be less than equal to 5. You can't have more than 5 OH or 5 NH or 5 NH plus OH. Next, secondly, the molecular weight of any molecule must be less than equal to 500. And why is that? 500 kD, okay, kilodalton. And why is that? Because in immunology, remember, any molecule which has a very big structure, that sometimes acts as antigen. That particular molecule might behave as immunogen. The bigger the molecule, it is going to start up and flare up the immune system. So any molecule to work as a drug, it must have molecular weight less than 500 kD. Because if the value is more than 500 dalton, then it is going to act as an immunogen in your body. And rather than curing your illness, it will be a cause of your illness. Okay. And next thing is that the C log P value must be less than equal to 5. Now what is C log P value? C log P value means the partition coefficient. And what does it mean? It means to be precise, it means the water absorptivity of a particular molecule. How much it is water, it is solubilized in water. The water solubility coefficient. And how do they actually measure it? There's a very simple way to measure it. They generally take a particular 1 octanol and water in 1:1 concentration. What? 1 octanol and water in 1:1 concentration. 1 octanol is 100% hydrophobic molecule, whereas water is 100% hydrophilic molecule. Okay. Now what happens? Now do you know what happens? If you mix those two things, will they mix up? No, they are not going to get mixed. They are simply like oil and water. They are immiscible substance. So you generally have to take 1 water and 1 octanol in 1:1 concentration, in 1:1 ratio, and shake it up. And obviously that particular water and molecule is going to get separated out in a layer. Now all you have to do is simply take out the drug that you for which is your target drug and put it in that particular mixture, and then simply shake it vigorously. And after you shake it up vigorously for 10 minutes or 15 minutes to allow the complete dissolution of that particular drug or molecule, you have to keep that particular stand stable for some time. And slowly after a certain time, you are going to find that 1 octanol and water gets separated in 2 separate layers. Now you have to simply take out water or 1 octanol, and you have to see what percentage of the molecule is present in water. And if you find that yes, 80% of the molecule is present in water, then you know that the rest of the 20% is present in 1 octanol. Now in that case, 80% of the molecule is 80% water solubilized. If you find 90% of the molecule in water, you know that the molecule is 90% water solubilized. And if you find 50% or 40% of the molecule in water, so you know that particular molecule is not a highly water soluble molecule. It's not a highly water soluble. It is very low solubilized in water. So now you have to edit the molecule to increase its water absorptivity. Because if that particular molecule is insoluble or non-soluble, then what is going to happen? You can't use that molecule. it is not going to be flow. It's not going to float in around with in your body, because our body is 70% water, right? That's why any drug that are currently in the market, which is of course an oral pill, any oral pill that is in the market, it has to be highly water soluble. Okay, so this was actually the criteria for the drug that has been told by the Lipinski, and this rule is also known as rule of 5. Rule of 5. Why? Because see, each of the criteria is actually multiple of 5. Each of the criteria is actually a multiple of 5. That's why it's also known as rule of 5, or is it also known as Pfizer rule. Why? Because the drug industry Pfizer, they follow this rule. They actually develops molecule according to this particular rule. Okay, because Lipinski used to work in Pfizer company. Okay, so that's why they actually uses this particular rule. Now later on, there's one other scientist who came forward. His name was Ghosh, and he found out. He actually measured all the compound again, and he then found out that the values given by the Lipinski was not a absolute value, and he modified the value, and he actually gave a few range. First of all, he told that the C log value cannot be anything. It cannot have a value of -20, -100, because Lipinski told that it should value should be less than equal to 5. But he told that the value should have a range. It must lie between -0.4 to 5.6. It can't have a value beyond -0.4. A value of -0.96 or -20 is not a suitable value. It must lie within -0.4 to 5.6. And he added certain other criteria also. First criteria added is the molar refractivity. So he told that the molar refractivity must be within 40 to 130. Okay, and the molecular weight, he told the molecular weight is, it can't have a molecular weight of 1 or 2 kd. The value must have certain molecular weight, and it must lie between 160 to 480. And he also told that the number of atoms that must be present in that particular molecule should be within 20 to 70, not more than 70, and the total polar surface area must be less than 140 angstrom square. Now later on, this particular 140 is actually, now it has been standardized as 130 angstrom square, but whatever, this is the rule that those particular molecule Ghosh actually told, that particular he prescribed. Now later on, there were other certain kind of rules like Egan rule, Muegge rule. They are also there, and they certainly added some other kind of criteria, but these are the two rules that is mostly followed worldwide. Okay, and any of the pharma industry, they generally follow these two criteria to design a drug. So any molecule, so suppose you have designed a molecule works as an excellent drug, but suppose the number of atoms is beyond 70, there are 90 atoms in that particular molecule, then you can't use that particular molecule as a drug, because it has been seen that any molecule or all the molecule which has number of atoms more than 70, they generally tend to be immunogenic. They generally have the tendency to be antigenic in nature. They have the antigenic property. That means they can actually give rise to antibodies, and we don't want that to happen. We can't allow our drug to elicit or start our immune response, right? Because if that occurs, then the particular drug is not a drug, it's a toxin for you. Understand? So this is the two criteria that we must follow, and people generally follows. But how do you know that the molecule that you design have this kind of things, and how do you draw or design a particular molecule? So for that, I last class actually asked you all to download a particular software, remember, ChemSketch. So now we're going to see actually ChemSketch and try to design and draw some molecules and see how that particular thing actually occurs. So everyone open up the ChemSketch application and try to follow me, and we're going to analyze and design some molecules and try to find out all these criteria. Okay. So when we first start the ChemSketch, so this is the basic home screen of the particular molecule, or not molecule, the particular software. Okay. Now generally in the left, see in the right hand panel, there are a list of most widely used cyclic compounds are present. in first of all you have this benzene. Suppose if I want to add a benzene, we only have to select any molecule, and then you have to select a particular cycle and then simply click in this particular region and see that particular thing has been added. Now suppose I want to add another benzene ring. Now I can add the benzene ring anywhere. I can add this benzene ring to this particular side or to this particular edge. Now see, as you hover your pointer and wherever you attach your pointer to this particular structure, it is going to show how will that molecule look like if you attach that group there. For example, if I attach this particular benzene ring to this edge, it will look like this. And what if I attach it to this arm? It will look like this. So suppose I am now clicking in that arm and see it has added. So that's how easy it is to add a group. Next, again I have selected a particular molecule, and suppose I have selected this pentagon. Okay, I have selected this and I want to add this particular thing into this edge. So I will select that particular edge where I want to add and I will simply click it and see it has been added. Now like this you can select all the molecules are most widely used groups that are present there in there. Now suppose in the same opposite direction, see there is a list of elements present. Now most widely used elements are generally given there, and generally the most widely used are carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, sulfur, phosphorus. These are the most widely used elements or atoms present. Okay, and because very rarely people uses some other kind of elements, but obviously sometimes you also use zinc, you have magnesium, manganese, this kind of thing. Now suppose I want to add oxygen. Suppose in this particular area, this is, as you know that what is this is, and if you simply hover your pointer to any edge, see you can actually find out the composition of that particular atom. See, in this particular case you don't know what is the composition, but from the sake of our education we know that if nothing is mentioned it usually means CH, right? If nothing is given it means C and H. So if you hover your pointer to any edge, see it's going to show up what is the composition CH. Now suppose I want to add a oxygen to this particular group, or I want to add a oxygen to this particular group here. Okay, now what I will do, I will select suppose I want to add nitrogen. I will select nitrogen and I will click here. So see the nitrogen has been added, replaced. So this particular carbon is actually replaced by nitrogen. And now I want to add a oxygen here. Now see, if I add a oxygen, it shows O plus. Why? I added an oxygen. By why is it showing O plus? Because of valency, because the oxygen has a valency of 2, right? And see, in this particular case there are 3 bonds associated with that particular oxygen atom. Now since oxygen can't have 3 bonds, so there is a positive charge onto that oxygen to maintain its valency, and this particular software has the capacity to automatically calculate the valency and optimize your structure. So suppose in this particular case it already analyzed that yes, the oxygen can't have a valence, it can't have 3 bonds. So what it did, it added a O plus or a positive charge to this particular case. Now suppose I want to destroy this particular bond. Now if I click it, see the bond has been reduced to a single bond and the oxygen or the plus charge has been vanished, because now I am maintaining the valency properly. And that is how you can also edit the bond. Suppose I want to add a triple bond here. So what to do? Simply select this particular bond here and click it. And if you click it, see the bond, it either you can increase the bond or decrease the bond. Now suppose I am selecting it and I increase the bond and decrease the bond. But why I am not getting a 3 bond? Because according to the carbon structure, according to the carbon skeleton, according to the chemistry, you can't have 3 bond here. What about this particular case? See, in this case also I can't have more than 3 bond. What about here? Can I add 4 bond? No. Here, yes, you can go on adding the bond until you finish the or you maintain the valency. Understand? So that's how this particular software works. So suppose now I want to add a phosphate group here. How to do it? Again, select the phosphate and select the area where you want to add. Click on it and the phosphate group has been added to it. But suppose Now I want a plus charge to this particular nitrogen, but I can't seem to bring it, right? I can't seem to bring the plus charge. How can I add the charge group here? In the same planner, or suppose you need to add another, first of all, let's see that suppose you need to add another element here, and that particular element is not mentioned. Suppose you need to add, what is not mentioned? Suppose you need to add magnesium. Can you see magnesium in this particular panel? You can't see magnesium, right? So how would I receive a magnesium? See, in the same field, just move a little bit up and there you're going to find out the periodic table of element. Okay, if your hover were pointed to that particular, it's going to say periodic table of element. Click on it, and if you click on it, the periodic table of element is shown. And in this particular case, you are going to find all the elements that have been discovered till date, all the elements. And now suppose you need to add a cobalt. So simply select cobalt, click OK, and select the point where you need to add a cobalt. So I have selected the edge here and I've added a cobalt in this particular case. But is this the role of periodic table of element? No, this particular software also has some other major functions. And what are the functions? See, in this particular case, when I click on this cobalt, in this particular, say it says the mass, it gives the information about the mass. It says you the oxidation state of the cobalt, +2, +3. Not only that, you also get to see the electronic configuration. And on the bottom, you get to see the general tab. And under general tab, you have all the physical and chemical parameters or properties of this particular molecule. You get to see the characteristics, the discoverer, the name, origin, and not only that, you also get to see the other chemical property like atomic radius, electronegativity, ionization potential, electron affinity, this kind of thing. But why are they important? Do we really need to know about this kind of things or these properties? Yes, absolutely we need to know. Why? Because suppose your molecule, this particular molecule that you have, it is going to bind to a protein. Suppose while binding to a particular protein, it is binding to a positive charged region. It is going to bind to a region which has positive charge on its surface. Okay. For example, now what are the residues that can impart positive charge to a particular protein? What residues can impart positive charge to a particular protein? Come on. Or go say amino acid with positive charge. Are you all listening or are you simply sleeping now? Lavanya. So say, give me a name of a particular amino acid with a positive charge or positive charge side chain. Come on, these are very basic questions. Arginine or lysine. Arginine and lysine, both these amino acids, they have positive charge in it. And suppose I want this particular molecule to bind to a protein, and that particular protein where it is going to bind to, that particular area is rich with positive charge amino acid. And if that occurs or if that happens, what does it mean? What kind of group of atom I am going to keep there? I am going to keep nitrogen, right? No, not nitrogen. I have to keep certain atoms which have high electronegativity, because that particular area has high positive charge. So if I can add an electronegative element to my particular molecule, it has better, or it will show higher affinity, because positive and negative attracts each other. Whereas if I keep a molecule or keep an atom which has very low electronegativity or which has a very high tendency of electropositivity is high, so what will happen? They are going to repel one another. Understand? You can't use that. So for that reason, you need to know the chemical parameter of that particular molecule, whether it is electronegative or not. And suppose I am adding cobalt in this particular thing, and the cobalt has electronegativity of 1.88. What about oxygen? See, when I click oxygen, the electronegativity comes to 3.44. 3.44. So obviously, if I am only keen on attaching or increasing the affinity by adding a group which has higher electronegativity, I am going to use oxygen. But not only oxygen, I can also use fluorine because it has much higher electronegativity. See, 3.98. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why you need electronegativity. What about the ionization potential? Same thing. Similar about the electron affinity also. Because depending upon electron affinity, you have the tendency of hydrogen bond formation. Okay, you have the tendency of increasing the electropositive, electronegative affinity. If you have a strong electronegative group with high electron affinity, then that particular molecule is going to bind to that arginine residue with much higher affinity rather than any other atom which has much lower electron affinity. Understand? But what is the use of atomic radius? Now suppose this particular drug that you are designing, it must bind to a particular protein. Now let me just open up a protein structure. Suppose this is the drug that I am designing against this particular protein structure. Okay. Now this particular protein structure, see, it has multiple. Suppose this particular protein structure, or let me see the surface topology of this particular protein structure. So this is how the protein looks like in your body, and this is how the molecule is going to behave in your body. Now suppose you want your molecule or you want your drug to bind to this area or to this groove. Okay. Now what does this state? Now in this particular case, just I am going to discuss the protein structure of this later on in later classes. Just understand that this red region, they show the electron negativity, and the blue region signifies electropositivity. So the blue regions are the nitrogens, whereas the red are the oxygens. Now suppose in this particular groove, a molecule wants to fit into this particular groove. I want my molecule to bind to this groove here. Now obviously to fit into this particular groove, this is the volume where the molecule should fit. This is the volume, right? This is the volume. Now if I have design a molecule which has an atomic radius more than this particular or prescribed volume, will that drug fit into this particular groove? No, it won't fit. So we have to analyze and see what is the distance between this, and there is some way to discuss this, and there are some ways you can measure this particular thing. Suppose I want to measure the distance between this particular residue, and suppose I want to this particular residue, and let me select. Okay. Suppose I want my molecule to fit into this particular groove, and they are separated by a distance of 9 angstrom. Fine. But suppose, what about these two residue? They are separated by a distance of 3.6 angstrom. Okay, remember this value, 3.6 angstrom. So now suppose I want my molecule to fit there. Now if I use magnesium, okay, but suppose there is a region which is much higher, suppose 3.6. okay, remember the value 3.6, that's good. Now suppose if I use barium, the atomic radius of barium is 2.28. Now that is too high. Now suppose if that particular groove has a radius of only 1.75 angstrom, suppose rather than 3.5, let's think that that particular groove has a radius of 1.75 angstrom. Now if I use a group like barium, will that particular molecule fit there? Of course not, because the radius is 2.28. I have to select any group or atom that can fit into that particular group, and so that it must have value lesser than 1.75. So what about strontium? Still high. Calcium? Still high. Magnesium? Okay. Beryllium? 1.01. Yes, so beryllium will will obviously move into that particular group, but the electronegativity is 1.57. So can I further decrease the electronegativity? Because remember, this particular group, it is rich with oxygen, right? So that means it is rich with negative charges. So I need to reduce the electronegativity further. So now beryllium, it has an electronegativity of 1.57, whereas the electron affinity is 0. What if I use lithium? Now see, if I use lithium, the electronegativity decreases, but the electron affinity increases. So which to select? Now see the atomic radius, it's 1.34, it is 1.01. Obviously barium has much lower atomic radius than lithium, so I'm obviously going to select beryllium in this respect. Like this, you can actually analyze and select an atom to be present in your particular group. Okay, and this is the lead optimization. I'm going to talk more about lead optimization a little later. Okay, so this is how you actually also optimize the structure. This is how you design a molecule, and this is why we require the chemical property of this atom as well. It's not only that you simply just add any group anywhere. No, that won't happen. You have to have logic in each and every step, and this particular thing ensures this particular logic. Okay, so like this, you simply can choose any atom and all the atoms from this periodic table of elements. And not only that, they also has another tab as NMR. So what is the NMR does? Now it actually depends, it actually is needed if you synthesize the molecule, because sometimes obviously you need to synthesize this molecule in your lab, and when you synthesize this molecule, obviously you won't know. Suppose in this molecule I want to attach this oxygen group to this particular area. How would I know that oxygen has been attached or not? Because physically you can't verify them, right? It's impossible for you to visualize it, whether oxygen has been added or not. So after each step you have to perform the NMR experiment. The NMR experiment actually tells you and gives you a signal. It gives you a peak that yes, this kind of peak are present, and by seeing a peak you know that yes, this particular element has been attached to this group. For example, in this particular group, suppose if I am selecting cobalt, the cobalt gives a peak at frequency 23.72. It gives a frequency at 23.7. What about nickel? It gives a frequency, it shows a peak at 8.9. Zinc shows a peak at 6.2. So each atom, they have a different frequency at which they give a particular peak. Okay, and by seeing that peak you can visualize whether that particular element has been attached or not. For example, let me show you an example. So this is an NMR peak. Okay, this is an NMR peak. Now this is an NMR peak of a particular G quadruplex structure. But see, you see, this is the frequency. This is the frequency, 7.5, 7.6. Now in case of this particular thing for which I have designed the structure, the peak at 18, this is the guanine, 18th position guanine. The guanine, if it is at 18th position, it gives a peak at this, it gives a peak at this ppm at 7.48, something like that. So it's giving a peak at this region. Now if I see that yes, suppose you have added oxygen. Now oxygen gives a peak at, suppose as I have told you, suppose gives a peak at, let me show you. Not oxygen, suppose I am thinking of, yes, suppose sulfur. Sulfur gives a peak at 7.67. Now when you add the sulfur to your group or to your molecule, and when you don't, when there is no sulfur, you get to see a peak like this. Like at 7.6 there is no peak. Suppose this particular molecule. At 7.6 there is no peak. So yes, there is no sulfur. But after you add a sulfur and you take an NMR spectra, you get to see a peak like this at the exact location. And after seeing that peak, you now sure that yes, I have a sulfur, and the sulfur is successfully attached to that location. This is the utility of this NMR tab. By taking a look into this frequency, you know where it is going to give you the frequency, and you perform the NMR. And if you find that exact frequency at that same peak at that frequency, you are now sure that yes, sulfur has been added to that particular region. Okay, and like that you have another tab for mass, because you know there are multiple isomers for a particular group, and all of them actually tends to all of them have different physical and chemical property, and this is the mass of this particular molecule. Okay, it shows you how many different type of isomers are there, and what is their property and whatnot. So this is the utility of this particular periodic table of elements. Okay, and now suppose I want to add, suppose I have this cobalt here, I have added a minus group here. I need to reduce the minus. Suppose I don't want to add a minus group there. What to do? Or I need to add a positive charge to this nitrogen. How to add it? See, in the same panel, if you come down, there is an option called plus or minus. And if you hover your pointer to it, it's going to show you the increment charge or something like that. Now, if I click it, and now if I click nitrogen, see, I have added a positive charge to this particular group. If I click onto this oxygen, see, I have added a positive charge to this particular oxygen. But why did it added a hydrogen? It added a hydrogen because to maintain the valency. Remember the valency? It should maintain the valency. And in the chemistry molecule also, the valency must be met with. And that is why it shows a particular oxygen or the hydrogen has been added. Same thing goes for the phosphate group also. And what if I click it more time? See, 2 positive charge has been added. Now 3 positive charge has been added, 4 has been added, and if I click it again, done, no charge. Why? Because that is the maximum charge of 4 that this phosphate group can actually have at this particular location, and if you click it again, it's going to go down. Now similarly, you click onto this particular edge here, and you also get to see the negative things like this decrement charge, and if you select it, it's going to add a negative charge over here. But I can't add it because that's not possible. But what about this nitrogen? If I click it, see that positive charge has been removed because I have added and supplemented with a negative charge. What if I add more? It won't occur because that is not viable. That particular structure is not viable. But in this particular case, see, if I add a cobalt, it gives a negative charge. If I add again, it gives a directly 3 negative, because 2 negative is not possible for cobalt. Okay, and if I click again, the negative charge vanishes. So that's how you can also manipulate with charges. Okay, understand? And apart from it, you can also add the radical group. And sometimes, you know, as I've told you, the ROS and NOS, those are radical. The radicals are highly reactive. So if you want your molecule, or if you want to have a group attached to your molecule which to increase its reactivity, you can obviously add that radical. And sometimes it is not only for molecule designing. Sometimes you also need to add or design this particular molecule for your project report and all. So this software is also for your publication purpose. You can also draw molecules for your publication purpose, and you can use this particular software for that. Understand? So this is the unique nature of this particular software. Now suppose I want to add carbon here. Suppose I want to add a carbon here. Okay, another carbon. I need to add carbon chains. So like this, see, I have added carbon chains. But see the structure. Have I maintained proper bond length or bond angle? No. If I add carbon branch like this, it is really difficult to maintain the proper bond length and bond angle. It's really difficult to maintain this. Okay, you can't do this. So how to edit this? See, there is an option called, into this particular is an option called draw normal here. See my pointer, and then another option called draw continuous. If I click on draw normal, and if I click on any edge, it is going to add a methyl group to here, provided you have selected carbon. If I select oxygen and if I click on this particular region, it's going to add oxygen there. But you have to select that carbon, add a methyl group, and now if you need to add a OH group here, select oxygen, click here, say it has been converted to OH. Okay, but my motto is to add carbon chain here. So now just beside it there is an option called draw continuous. Okay, now I need to first edit this group. Now select the draw continuous and select the edge where you want your carbon chain to start, and then simply hold the molecule, hold your molecule and or left click that particular mouse and you simply drag it up. And see, as I drag it up, it simply states how many carbon chain I have added. Till now I have added C12, that means 12 carbon chains. I can also add and nullify like that. Okay. So see, when I have finished adding, now all the carbon chains are of accurate length. They are of proper, maintaining the proper bond angle, and everything is in the neat and nice sections. Understand? So this is one way of adding molecule to here. But sometimes, remember the stereochemistry of a molecule? Sometimes when you see a molecule in 2D platform, generally the molecule, when you design a molecule, it doesn't remain in a 2D environment. It attains a 3D structure. Okay. Now obviously that means there are some bonds within a plane, there are some bonds below the plane, there are some bonds above the plane. And this all discusses with the stereochemistry. Remember the stereochemistry, right? I think you should remember the stereochemistry. How to add those things, how to add a 3D bond, how to add a or select a bond that will be projected below the plane and some bond which will be projected above the plane. See, just after draw chains, there is another option called up stereo bond and down stereo bond. Select that molecule, and if you click anywhere, it is going to add a up stereo bond. You can also use this on the already drawn structure to maintain the down stereo bond or to optimize the stereochemistry. Suppose in this particular case, I have added a down stereo bond to this particular bond. Now suppose this bond is a down stereo bond. Simply select that and it's going to show you a down stereo bond. I need to change it, and so select the down stereo bond, click it, and we know that the bond with bold bond is obviously the up stereo bond, whereas the dashed bond is down stereo bond, and this is the usual scenario. This is how we actually use stereochemistry, right? So you can also add the up stereo bond and down stereo bond, because obviously the molecule that you're going to synthesize, it won't be a 2D molecule, it will be a 3D molecule. And the property of a molecule also depends upon the stereochemistry. There are certain molecules which are not active at a particular stereochemistry, and there are certain molecules which are active at a particular stereochemistry. Okay, so you need to make sure that yes, you are actually maintaining that particular thing. You are maintaining the isomerism. Remember the R and S nomenclature, right? There are some, it has been found that actually there was it was an event in 1990s. Okay, I forgot the name of the drug, but there is a drug actually. When people worked with that particular drug, they found that yes, it is working excellent for a particular disease. So they are marketed the drug and all. But after marketing, they have found that any people and maximum people who are taking that drug, it is becoming fatal for them. They are actually succumbing to various kind of side effects and they are simply dying. And they shook them up. And they later took that particular molecule and they analyzed it, and later they found out that the molecule that they have actually designed in lab was actually a R nomenclatured molecule, whereas the molecule that they have marketed was the S configuration. At that time, people had no idea that a drug could have diverse effect within its R and S nomenclature. And so later they had to actually take up and they had to retract all the drug out of the market. And they were sued, and that's not the issue. The main issue is many people died for that simple miscommunication, or they didn't know it actually. They didn't knew it. So after that, people are now actually, they work with both the RS nomenclature and they actually try to find out which nomenclature is actually working. And it is really difficult to identify the nomenclature. It's really difficult, because if I simply give you the structure and I ask you to draw all the RNS nomenclature of this particular molecule, will it be possible for you? Had you been a chemist, it would have been possible for you. But what about the other people? They can't. So how to do it? See, in this particular case, there is an option called R and S. This is a stereoisomer generator. Once you design a molecule or draw a molecule, simply select this R and S, and if you select it, see, it is going to analyze the structure and it is going to automatically generate the structure, different structure. Now it is up to you to select the structure that you want. For example, you can use this plus mouse button here to analyze the structure. So this is the structure 1, this is the structure 2. Okay, so this is how the structure looks like. See, in this particular case, this is the up down stereo, this is up stereo, but in this particular case, see, this is also down stereo, this is also down stereo, right? What about structure 3? In case of structure 3, see how it is different. We have to see actually how it is different. And in this particular case also how it is different. No, it is actually pretty same. It is only different in this particular aspect. So by analyzing it, suppose I have selected this particular structure. Okay, now I will simply select the structure that I want, click on insert selected, and see, I will click on it, and this particular molecule has been selected. And now see, this is how the structures are different. This was an up stereo bond, but this is a down stereo bond, and this simple mechanism can actually is enough to nullify a particular molecule. Okay, but what if I simply wait, suppose I want to change all this stereoisomer. Okay, now let me suppose I want to now, so I have to select, and this is one of the way to select the molecule. Is one of lasso on and off, and then we have a square. If you have a square, anything that comes under this particular square is going to get chopped down. Or if you select lasso, you can specifically select the molecules that you want. Suppose I need to remove this particular atom and this atom, so I have selected those atoms. See, only this particular atom has been selected. If I remove it, that particular went out. So now I am again selecting R and S. Now if I select R and S, it's also going to select and generate the structures like this. Okay, and now depending upon that, suppose you can select the R and S nomenclature. So you don't need to draw the up down stereo bond also. Simply draw the molecule in a 2D format as you want, and then simply click on the R and S nomenclature, and it's going to generate all the stereoisomers that are possible for your molecule. Okay, so this is one of the way to draw or design the molecule. So now suppose I'm going to remove that structure. I'm going to use this structure only. Now see, now remember the log P value. Suppose I have designed this molecule. Now I have to calculate the log P value. I need to see that whether this particular molecule is going to be solubilized in water or not, right? How to calculate? See, just beside R and S there is an option called log P. Click on it, and it is automatically unknown oxidation states. I don't know for which element is it showing unknown oxidation states. It is still showing some unknown oxidation states. Yes, there is one drawback of this particular thing is that you have to make sure that all the oxidation states are maintained properly. And for that, suppose I'm just showing you, I need to actually check also what are the different oxidation states and all. Yes, so that was the problem with this particular phosphate. So now see, if I click on that, so I've edited that particular molecule, and if I click on log P, it is saying that the calculated log P is 4.89. And what was the log P value according to the Cauchy's rule? It was lie between minus 0.4 to 5.6. So if it is well within the range, that means this particular molecule is actually solubilized in water. Okay, but this will obviously change. See, if I add another group here, suppose I will add a OH group here, and I will add a NH group here. Now I will calculate the log P value. Now see the log P value, it's changed to 3.45 because it is much more solubilized in water. Adding this group increased its water solubility property. So without staying at the uppermost range of 5 or 5.6, earlier it was 4.89, right? So without staying at the outermost range, it has now come into the middle range of 3.45. So that means it has increased I have increased its water solubility. And this is what I mean by lead optimization. I think Payal, you asked me that question, right? Lead optimization.
Yes, sir.
So this is lead optimization. You have to optimize the molecule by checking the structure, by taking a look into all the other parameters. You need to modify the structure, and this is how we modify the structure. Sometimes by seeing that particular molecule, suppose I find out that after this particular molecule interacted with a particular protein, there is a arginine group here at this location, okay, but the distance between this carbon, this CH3 and arginine is 4.6 angstrom. Now it is obviously far away, but I feel that if I could add or increase the length, then that particular arginine would have interacted with this particular group, and that would have caused much higher affinity. That would have increased the affinity of this particular molecule. So how to increase the length? I will simply add another group like this, and over on that particular thing I will add a oxygen group here, and so I know that since I have also now minimized the distance. So this is also one kind of lead optimization. Now let me check the log p value. The log p value is now 1.42. See, as I increase, obviously if you increase more nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, more NH group means it is much more solubilized in water. But see what happens if I change them to, I change them to C. See the log p value 3.38. It again increased from 1.45 because if I have more amide groups are much more solubilized in water. See, 1.28. Understand? This is how we optimize the molecule. This is lead optimization. Okay, this is one of the optimization that I have shown you, but there are multiple optimization procedures. You might need to increase the hydrogen bonding capacity. You might need to increase or decrease the toxicity. Okay, so for that you need to modify the structure. Okay, after that suppose you need to add, suppose you made a molecule like this. Now the next thing is to check whether that particular molecule that you have designed, is it novel or not? Is it a molecule? Is it already available in the market, or already people have already discovered this this molecule? How do you know? There's an option called e-molecules. Simply click on e-molecules. If you click on e-molecules, it is going to do a web search, and so you can do a search exact structure. You can select search substructure. I'm going to keep search exact structure, select in browser and click on OK. And if you do it, this is another database called e-molecules database. This particular database has all the molecules that are already present in the market that you can actually buy up. Because if this molecule was already in the market and people are selling this molecule, it would have showed the structure, the molecular weight of the molecule, and the supplier who sells this molecule. Now since the structure that I have designed is a novel molecule, there is no list of this molecule in this particular database. Understand? Now it also might be occurred that this molecule might not be a drug also. How would I know if this molecule is a drug or not? Does it have all the drug-like parameter? So for that we have to check its drug likeness and the pharmacokinetics. Understand? And there is some ways to check it. Obviously, Apart from that, you can also use this particular structure for other part. Wow. Suppose sometimes what happens, you need to make more complex molecule, and that complex generation of the complex molecule inhibits the or creates some type of what should I say? What is the term? I'm forgetting the term. If two molecules are in very close proximity, what it is called? Steric hindrance. That sometimes might lead to steric hindrance and something like that. So for example, suppose I'm adding a CH3 group here. Now this might create a steric hindrance among these three. I don't know. So how to avoid those? How to optimize this whole structure? Now under tools there is an option called clean structure. Simply click this particular molecule, and if you click this molecule, see the molecule has been rearranged, and it has been rearranged in such a manner that it maintains all the proper angle and all. Now see the structure that I have drawn, and the structure it is showing, it is completely different, right? So in this particular case, there is no steric hindrance among this particular molecule, and all the molecules are in far away from each other. Understand? And this clean structure should be done, because if you don't do this, then what happens, usually there are some steric hindrance and all. For example, suppose if I add another group here, and if I add not that particular thing, now I added another group like this. Now this might cause steric hindrance with this particular group, and suppose I added another group here, obviously it's going to cause steric hindrance. Now simply click on tool and click on clean structure. See, it has been optimized as such so that there is no steric hindrance between them. Understand? So this is how the molecule will actually behave like this. Okay, that's the clean structured molecule. Now apart from it, see in this particular left panel, what is this, right hand panel, there is another box called option table of radicals. If you click on this particular thing, you are going to find all the most widely used carbon groups or the miscellaneous group like nitro group, isocyanato group, isothiocyanato, acidamido, formamido, this kind of group, so that you don't have to draw it personally. Suppose I need to add a formamido group into this particular OH. So what to do? Will I draw it? No, I will simply select the formamido and I will simply click it. The formamido group has been added. And most widely used, the groups that are most widely used, that are generally present here, so that you don't have to draw them individually by placing each atom and each atom one after another. Like see the nitro, all kind of groups, see the methoxycarbyl, benzoyl, isobutyryl, these kind of all groups are actually mentioned here. And apart from it, you also have the amino acid to design a peptide molecule. Remember you talked about the peptide drug? So you can also design peptide molecule by using and selecting the amino acid and joining one amino acid after another. Okay, you can simply design this particular molecule, and that's how we actually design a molecule. And after this molecule has been designed, let me now remove this particular group because let me see the log P value, it's 4.2, so I'm going to keep it. Okay, so as you see this particular thing here, now there's another option called, see there's a smiling boss, and this is called smiles notation, and if you click it, it's going to give the smile notation of your molecule. What is the smile notation? The smile notation is simply like the naming of your molecule. It's simply like the IUPAC name, but the IUPAC names are much more complicated, and it takes people or the software can't understand the IUPAC name. For example, suppose you need to share this structure with your friend or with your guide. How would you do it? Are you going to draw the structure and send him to it? It's going to take a lot of time. Rather simply send this particular molecule, because there are multiple softwares which can actually read this particular smile notation. See here also you can upload the smiles. So suppose if I have this smile notation, I will simply copy this particular smile notation. How to copy? Select that particular C and simply Ctrl C, and you can copy. And now in this particular case, you can simply paste the smiles notation and click on search. Now it is going to see searching for that molecule, and there is no such molecule present. So this particular molecule can be a novel drug. Any question till this part? Fine. Now we need to check the other parameters or properties of this molecule, like ADME, the drug likeness parameters. other parameters like pharmacokinetics. So this particular molecule called Swiss ADME, this is another molecule that can actually, or another not molecule, another server that actually allows you to predict the drug likeness of your molecule. Now in this particular case, what can you do? You can now in this particular case, you can obviously draw the molecule like this. You can obviously draw the molecule. You have all the things to draw, but sometimes in this particular it's really difficult to draw a complex molecule like this. But how to draw? Simply, just as I've shown you how to draw the molecule, you can simply draw it like that. You can place it like that. There are ways to add it like that, but and whatnot. And after you have drawn the molecule, click on this middle mouse button. It's going to enter the list of smiles here. Okay. And apart from that, what you can do, you can simply copy the smiles from your molecule, because this particular software is much more easier to draw. It is much easier to draw here. You can copy the smile and you can paste the smile into this particular channel here. So I have pasted it. Okay. And after you paste it, simply click on run. And if you click on run, it is going to analyze the molecule and show you all the parameters. Now see, since I've added two molecules, one that I've drawn and the other, it's showing molecules 1, molecule 2. So let's see what it is showing. So as you click on it, the first of all, it shows you the overall parameters of this particular molecule. Parameter means the lipophilicity, the size, the polarity, insolubility, insaturation and flexibility. And if you hover your pointer to this particular thing, it's going to show you the parameter range. For example, see, if I bring my cursor here, it's going to show you the lipophilicity range. The lipophilicity must lie between -0.7 and +5. The size must vary between 150 to 500. Whereas the polarity or the TPSA must vary between 20 angstrom square to 130 angstrom square, something like that. And overall, it's also color coded. That means this particular molecule must lie within this pink zone. If it moves out of the pink zone, then the molecule has disadvantage. And see this white region, this is the lower limit. A molecule must lie within this white region, and within this white, it must lie within this pink zone. Okay, now in this particular case, the molecule is so small that the polarity of the molecule has been compromised and it is way below the prescribed range. So what are the other parameters that we can see? We can first of all get to see the formula and the molecular weight. Say it is 162.23, and according to Ghosh, remember what was the parameter or the molecular weight should have been? It should be within 160 to 480, but what it is 162. So it is just going simply beyond the size. So simply check now what is this red? This red line is actually the parameter for your designed molecule. Now in case of size, see, it is just beyond the outermost range. After that, you have the number of heavy atom, it is 6. Number of aromatic heavy atom, 6. Number of rotatable bonds, 1. Number of hydrogen bond acceptor, 1. Number of hydrogen bond donor, 0. Remember the hydrogen bond donor and acceptor, it must be less than equal to 5, less than equal to 10. Total number of atom must be 20 to 70. And what's the total number of atoms? Heavy atom is 12. So this is the atom. And the molar refractivity 50.37. But what was the range of molar refractivity for the TPSA? See, the molar refractivity should lie within 40 to 130. In this particular case, you have 50.23 C7. Whereas the TPSA, it must lie within it must lie within 20 angstrom square to 140 angstrom square. But the TPSA value is 9.23 angstrom square. So it is way below the range. And next, it also calculates the lipophilicity. Now, what are these various things? These are various algorithm which calculates the lipophilicity. For example, what is I log P? It's a different algorithm. X log P is another algorithm. And if you hover your pointer to this question mark, it is going to describe the algorithm for you. So this particular I-log-P was actually described by Diana et al. At 2014, whereas the X-log-P was described by Shanghai Institute of Organic Chemistry. W-log-P was from Wildman, SA and Crippen. Okay, and it was developed in 1999. So all these parameters are actually the algorithm to predict the lipophilicity of a particular molecule, and all of them tells that yes, the value of this particular lipophilicity 3.6, 2.66, 2.57. See, most of the cases they are similar to one another, apart from this silicosity and X-log-P. They say it's 3.08 and 3.56. So the consensus log-P taking all of this average is 2.88. Okay. And next comes the water solubility. So in this particular case, obviously the molecule is really small, and it says that yes, according to log S or ESOL algorithm, the molecule is soluble in water. According to aliphatic log S, it says the molecule is soluble in water, and according to the silicosity, it says the molecule is soluble in water. And after that you get the pharmacokinetic. First of all, you have the GI absorption, that means the gastrointestinal tract absorption. That means will this molecule be absorbed through the gastrointestinal tract or through your GI tract? It says yes, the molecule will get absorbed through GI tract, and the tendency of it to get absorbed is really high. So therefore you get to see a very high molecule. Okay, and after that, will it be BBB permeant? What is BBB? BBB is the blood-brain barrier permeant. We know that to prevent the encroachment of any molecule into the brain, we have a blood-brain barrier just at the stem of our, or just beneath our cranium. Okay, from the spinal fluid at that particular range, and that simply filters out all the microbes and viruses and other small molecules. And obviously, since brain is actually the most important organ of our body and it controls everything in our body, if there are any major fault, it is going to your body is going to collapse, right? And that's why the body prevents the entry of any molecules into the brain if it is not required. Okay, and generally, if a molecule or a drug, if it is not a drug for brain, if it's not a drug for Alzheimer's or something like that, then it should not reach brain. Okay, so in that respect, will this molecule pass through the blood-brain barrier? It says yes, the molecule will pass through blood-brain barrier. That means this molecule will reach the brain. However, if it is a paracetamol or if it is a Saridon that is required to reduce your migraine pain or your headache, then those molecules must cross the blood-brain barrier. But for other, it is advised to design a molecule that cannot cross the blood-brain barrier, because if it crosses the blood-brain barrier, then there is some chance of other side effects, right? And we don't want that to happen. And after that, it says the inhibitor. Will this particular molecule, after it gets metabolized, will it be a inhibitor or a substrate for P-glycoprotein? What is PGP? P-glycoproteins are found on what? Say, what is P-glycoprotein? Next day I want to hear. Yes, say.
These are found in BBB.
P-glycoprotein? No.
Yeah.
No. Try to think.
They are the cell membrane glycoprotein.
Yes, they are multi-drug resistant proteins. Okay. They are multi-drug resistant proteins. More normally, they are actually the efflux pump. They are ATP dependent efflux pump, and they help you to what happens when they are whenever they are present in a particular microbe or whenever they are present in your body, what happens? They tries to, suppose it is present in a particular microbe, so it gives rise to multi-drug resistance on a particular microbe. And what it helps in, it simply engulfs the particular drug and it shoots it out of the microbe body. Suppose you are giving a toxic drug that is going to destroy that particular microbe. Suppose you have a virus, you are giving an antiviral. It is usually present in bacteria actually. So suppose you are giving an antibacterial agent, Now if it is a substrate for P-glycoprotein, what will happen? P-glycoprotein will simply take that molecule and it is going to throw it out of the system, and the bacteria is not going to get killed. It is going to give rise to a multi-drug resistance in nature. And it tells us that is it a substrate for P-glycoprotein? It says no. So that means had this molecule been an antibacterial drug, it would have killed the bacteria. It would have not been effluxed out by the P-glycoproteins. And sometime what happens after this drug gets destabilized or metabolized in your body, as I have told you, it gives rise to certain metabolites, right? Small metabolites. Now those small metabolites sometimes can be a inhibitor. They can sometimes act as inhibitor of this kind of molecules, this CYP-A12. What are these? These molecules are cytochrome oxidases. And remember the cytochrome oxidases, if this becomes inhibitor of cytochrome oxidase, what will happen? It will stop the ATP synthesis procedure. It is going to harm your body. And it says, yes, it has the property of acting as a CYP-A12 inhibitor. But will it be an inhibitor for this? It says no, it is not going to act as inhibitor for that. Because sometimes if it has a tendency to act as inhibitor for that, what will happen? It is going to stop the ATP production in your body. It's going to it might be fatal for you. Okay, it might be fatal for you. So that's why generally for pharmacokinetics, generally this molecule should not be an inhibitor for this cytochrome oxidases. But sometimes you might see that yes, there are inhibitors for that, but they generally don't occur. Okay, so it can be inhibitor for any one of them. It doesn't matter until unless all the other parameters are fully valid. Next comes the drug likeness, and it says, does it obey the Lipinski parameter? It says yes, there are 0 violations. And what are the Lipinski parameters? Simply hover your pointer to this question mark and you get to see the parameters very short. The molecular weight must be less than equal to 100, M log P must be less than equal to 4.15, N or O must be less than 10, that means the hydrogen bond acceptor must be less than 10 and hydrogen bond donor must be less than 5. Okay, so yes, it obeys all the rule. Does it obey Gauch's rule? It says yes. Does it obey Weber rule? This Weber, Egan, Muegge, there are also other kind of drug likeness parameters. Okay, and what does Weber say? Weber say for any molecule to be drug, it must have less than 10 rotatable bonds, and that's why you see number of rotatable bonds. See the option number of rotatable bonds 1, because it's because of Weber. It obeys the Weber also, it obeys Egan also, but it doesn't obey the Muegge parameter. Why? Because what are the violations? It says there are 2 violations. The molecular weight is less than 200, because yes, this molecule is really small, and it has heteroatoms less than 2. What's the Muegge parameter? See, this is the Muegge's parameter. The molecular weight must lie within 200 to 600. X log P must lie within -2 to 5. Then you have TPS, a number of rings, and blah blah blah, all the other kind of things. Okay, so it says there are 2 parameters, and the bioavailability score is 0.55 bioavailability. Remember the bioavailability score? How did I calculate it? The bioavailability, amount of drug absorbed by drug dose, and the more the score towards 1, the better the drug is. So it has 0.55 score. Now let's talk about the second molecule that we have actually designed. Again, we are going to get all the parameters like that, the same parameters, and see the class. It is moderately water soluble, but the other drug was much more soluble. It was much more soluble as water, right? And next you have the parameters. See, it has GI absorption high. Now, is this molecule DBB permeant? It says no, the molecule is not permeant. Whereas see, the flexibility had gone beyond this particular threshold. Okay, so does it obey Lipinski? It says yes, it obeys Lipinski. But does it obey the Gauch's rule? It says no. There are 2 violations. What are the violations? The molar refractivity is more than 130, whereas the atoms number is also more than 70. Yes, it's the most. So now you need to optimize the molecule. Now you need to reduce the number of atoms. In general, I'm just showing you how to do that. Suppose I'm simply omitting all these atoms, and if I omit all these atoms, see, I have the parameters is also shortened, and if I click on it, and if you then simply, all the rest of the things are same, you know it. I'm just going to show you how to make this different. I'm again keeping it here. I'm clicking on run. If I click on run, It analyzes the structure and says now see it obeys Ghosh's rule. Now see it obeys Ghosh's rule. And now see, whereas earlier it was showing moderately soluble for all three algorithm, now only one algorithm is showing moderately soluble, whereas the other two is showing soluble in water, and it is actually optimizing everything. Okay, all these parameters say yes. So that's how you actually and we actually get to see this particular analyze the ADMET profile. We can profile the molecule we have designed. Okay, you before designing the molecule or before using this particular drug on people, you already know that molecule that you have designed, is it good or not, and if it is bad, then you can actually modify the structure accordingly. And next I'm going to show you the boiled egg structure. What is this boiled egg structure? The boiled egg structure simply tells you the solubility of your molecule, and this is the blood-brain barrier permeability. If a molecule is present in this particular thing, that means yes, it has crossed the blood-brain barrier. If the molecule is present in this egg white portion, why it is boiled egg? Because it looks like a boiled egg, right? The yellow yolk and the white egg white portion. So if a molecule is present in this white portion, it simply feels like that molecule is absorbed by the GI tract, but it can't go. It is blood-brain barrier impermeable. And if a molecule lies within this other gray zone, that signifies that that particular molecule is not GI tract absorbable. It is not absorbed by the GI tract. Sometime we are going to find that the molecule is present at this edge. At this edge, then that means it is slightly absorbable. So if the molecule is present at center, it is much better. Now in this particular case, it is present at center. So that means it is highly probable that it is going to move through the blood-brain barrier. Okay, so simply by taking a look into the boiled egg also, you get to know the solubility structure of the molecule. And it's really important. As I've told you, the boiled egg structure is really important because the molecule must be highly solubilized in water to become a drug. And even if not, the molecule must not penetrate inside the brain. It must not move inside the brain actually. And you can also download this data. You can simply click on this particular CSV and you can download the data also. All these parameters will be downloaded as an Excel sheet. Okay, you can click on it and it will be downloaded. See, it will be downloaded as an Excel sheet so that you can also show it in. See, all the parameters are mentioned. All the parameters are actually mentioned. All the parameters are mentioned. The parameters that you have seen, all the parameters are mentioned. So you can also download this structure also. Okay, so this is how you actually analyze the particular molecule structure. You analyze a chemical molecule, you design and draw a molecule. Understand? And not only that, you can also use this particular software to save your molecule picture. Suppose I have designed and drawn this picture. Now I want to, obviously, suppose I need to write a project, I need to submit this. What to do? Simply click on file and click on export. And on export, simply select this file as JPEG. Click on desktop. Okay, and simply select save. Now see, I have given the name as no name. Where is no name? Yes, no name. So this is the molecule that I have designed. So you can also use this particular picture in your project copy also. Understand? There are other things that you can also perform from this software. There are various other things, and it has no bound actually. Various other things. For example, for a particular molecule, you have seen that for a chemistry molecule, usually we put a R group over here, right? And below we write R equal to this. You can also this is an option called R radical. Click it and see the R1. Now you can simply click on this text box option. This T is for text, and I've seen text, and now you can write as R1 equals to, suppose I can write CH3 comma OH comma zinc like this, and suppose I will keep this like that. So CH3OH zinc. So R1 stands for this R1. I have written R1 stands for CH3 oblique or OH or zinc, like that. So I don't need to draw multiple structure. I'll simply mention R1 and I'll mention the variations that might be possible. Okay, so these are the also things that you can actually perform, and like that. Okay, so any question now? Now, Pyle, did you get your answer about that lead optimization?
Yes, sir. I got my answer.
Okay, sure. So, any other question? No question means you have completely asked and you have completely understood everything. Okay. So I think there is no question. So okay. So that will be all. And your next class will be again on the next weekend. And in this particular course, after this class gets over, I'm also going to give you a short project to work on. Nothing much, but it will be a. I have kept 3 classes for that. I'm going to take around 10 to 11 classes, and I've kept 2 3 classes for to cover your doubt and give a short project with those various tools that I'm going to show you, so that you also get the idea of how to perform a short survey or how to use these tools to generate an answer and all. Okay. Okay, fine. Okay, so bye then. If you don't have any question, then bye. Thank you for attending the class. Okay.